Sunday we were talking about, as a side, just as one of the verses we talked about was Esther. And so let's go to Esther 5:9 real quick and just kind of jump into where we were. The idea behind Sunday's sermon was that God really, really wants to bless you and reward you. The word bless and reward we talked about. And that God wants to reward his children, okay? Yes, there is an element where we cannot become so involved in this world that this world becomes our home and our treasure and our purpose. We really have to maintain the temporalness and the temporariness of this world, okay? So when we do face the end of our life, we do say, well, that's natural. That's the way it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be eternal here. I'm not, I mean, if I'm going to be eternal here, then, man, I got sold short, okay? I got sold a bad bag of beans here by Jack and the Beanstalk. But I've got to, there is more awaiting me. And that we have to face the fact that this is a temporary home, a temporary assignment. I was very, very young, very, very young, when this became a reality to me in a very young spiritual way. With the book that Dale Evans, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans wrote, when their daughter passed away as a child. I recommend the book to anyone. It's an old book, of course. I mean, it was written in the 50s, but it was called Angel Unaware. And I would recommend that book to anyone who has not read it, or go back and read it again. Because it talks about how she and Roy really were not able to have children and had to adopt children. And they waited for this one girl and had her, but she was taken at a very young age and very quickly she got a disease and died very quickly. And in their life, they realized that this girl came into their life basically as though it was an angel's visitation, the visitation of an angel. That she had come for this time to bring them joy and to bring them love and to bring them an unselfishness of self where they poured themselves in to another person, where as a married couple without children, they would have never realized this. And how she said, I was weeping and crying over the loss of my child when the Lord took me to this verse and said, some of you have entertained angels unaware. Yes. And she said, wow. And she said, the thing is, even if my child had lived to be 70, if my child lived to be 90 and was taken from me, who am I to say that it was still not that angelic visitation? But rather than being 6 years or 5 years, was a 70-year visitation or a 90-year visitation. That we entertain angels unaware. How do we not know that our husband or our wife or our children or our bosses, yeah, our in-laws, may be the angels that we're entertaining and that are bringing out the very best in us? And so we were talking about how God wants to bless us and how the blessing of God is this reward is something that we don't have to earn. And so we went to Mordecai, and we talked about Mordecai and Haman here in Esther 5:9, and said, Haman went out that day glad and pleased of heart, but when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate that he did not stand up or tremble before him, Haman was filled with anger against Mordecai. Haman controlled himself, however, went to his house, sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh. Then Haman recounted to them the glory of his riches. Let me tell you how rich I am. Let me tell you how much I've got. And the number of his sons, in every instance where the king had magnified him, and how he had promoted him above the princes and the servants of the king. Haman also said, even Esther the queen, let no one but me come with the king to the banquet which she had prepared, and tomorrow also I'm invited by her with the king. Yet all this does not satisfy me. Every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting in the king's gate. Now this boy's got a bitterness problem, wouldn't you say? I mean, He can recount all of the glory and all the wonders and all the accolades and all of the rewards that he's got in life, and yet this one Jew is ruining his life. How many times do we Christians have everything poured upon us and given to us and the blessings of God, and we let one stone in our shoe ruin our life? We let that one person irritate us, you know? Just tear our day apart. Well, verse 14, then Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends said to him, have a gallows 50 cubits high made, and in the morning ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it, then go joyfully with the king to the banquet. And the advice pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. All right? So he's got the gallows made in one night. He's got it ready to go. During that night, the king could not sleep, so he gave an order to bring the book of records, the chronicles, and they were read before the king. Now, there's a funny thought here. You know, of course, the king is having insomnia. He can't sleep, and what's the most boring thing to do but come and talk? Let's read the chronicles of what I've done. That should have excited him. Think about the parallel. Haman recounted all of his deeds, and so did the king. One of them did it to glorify himself. One of them did it to go to sleep. Think about the mindset there, the different mindset, you know? That I'm doing this to build up the bitterness, and one of them says, it'll put me right to sleep. Yeah, the king, so he brought the book. Now, verse 2. It was found written that Mordecai had reported concerning Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs who were doorkeepers, and that they had sought to lay hands on the king. All right? So on Sunday, we established the fact that even though Mordecai was really oblivious to what was going on, he's not a part of what's going on. This is Haman, the king. This is Haman here, the king here. And this is going on with Haman. And again, how many times have you ever been kind of angry with somebody and you knew it, but they didn't? You ever been angry with somebody and it's just tearing you up, and they're just going tra-la-la-la-la throughout their day, tra-la-la-la-la, nothing's bothering me, everything's okay, I'm not worried about it. You know, and you're just sitting there going, I hate them so bad, they make me so angry, you know, I hope your dog dies too. You know, I mean, you're just all angry at them and all bitter about something somebody does. And what did they do? They're enjoying life. I mean, Mordecai is, they're plotting to kill him, and he's saving the king's life. He's just doing what needs to be done. So anyway, we turned around and learned in the story really what happened. So I want to give you a quick rundown. Let's do a quick rundown and outline. If you've got your papers there, I gave you some papers. And let's look at the book of Esther as a quick outline. And then I'm going to show you how this is one of the very, very largest experiences of anti-Semitism that we can find in the Bible, and teaches us some about the anti-Semitism of today. But there is coincidences. What do we always say about biblical coincidences? There isn't such a thing. But the gallows and the size of the gallows actually tell us something about the feasts. They have to do with the feasts and the festivals of Israel. Remember, they're in exile. They're in Assyria, right? But there's a hidden message here. There's a hidden message in the gallows that tells us the future of the Jews. Okay? So, let's look at what I've given you is Esther 1. These are by chapters. Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see that? So E1 is Esther, the first chapter. First of all, we start off with the king's banquet. The king is having a wonderful banquet, and number 2 there, your fill in the blank, is Queen Vashti. In Esther's 5:9, we said that gallows is actually the word etz, E-T-S, which means wood or tree. It doesn't really say the word gallows, it doesn't say the word pole, but it's more wood. It's the word wood. So he's got a 75-foot high wood structure of some kind, okay, that's built. Now, the word here, the wording in the Hebrew, could mean that the total height is like 75 to 80 feet. But I want to remind you that the walls of the city were 65 feet high. So if you put it on top of the wall, you have a 70-foot gallows.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
From the ground. From the ground it could be. It doesn't have to be really a 75-foot wooden structure, but the wood is that high. Now, I can't tell you that that's the answer. It's ambiguous. It is unsaid in Scripture. But it could have been a constructed feature in one night that was 75 feet tall. Or it could have been 10 to 15 feet tall on top of the wall. Okay? So you go with whatever you want to there, because it doesn't say, you might as well believe what you want to. Then it says to hang. Now again, the word to hang in this place means to impale. Okay? The word impale is better than hang. And I read commentaries, I read some online chats in seminaries, seminarians and hermeneutic websites, where preachers and the theologians get together to argue. I just want to get up there and smack them. Go, geez, quit being such a cartoon. They're saying, if the word's hang, then it means hang. Okay, that's what it means, hang. Yeah, but in the Hebrew it says impale, so why are you even using the word hang? Because it's English, okay? If this is a study of hermeneutics and language, get offline. You don't know what you're talking about, okay? You're arguing about the wrong thing. It means to impale, is what it means. And I told you that these pictures right over here, look at these two pictures, okay? Debbie and Bruce put those up for us, and we appreciate that work, and I know that putting it center block was probably not the best time of Bruce's life, okay? There's that center block over there, okay? And I hang that picture on the center block. Now, that picture is hung. Is there a rope and a neck involved? No. What's involved is a nail. That picture is there's almost a rope and a neck. But those are impaled, what we call it hanging, don't we? Jesus, was hung on the cross.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that he had a rope around his neck.
No.
And so when we talk about hanging, it can mean and it can mean right? It can be either one. It can mean either one. So let's not get along up. Look at 1 Chronicles 10. One of the saddest stories in the Bible. It just breaks my heart to read this story. Because of the backstory, just of what it means. 1 Chronicles 10. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. Remember, I've shown you pictures of Mount Gilboa. That's the one that only has trees growing on one alley. Okay? Because David cursed it, because it's where Saul died. And so, it's just a demarked line. There's trees, there's not. 3,000 years later. 3,000 years later. The Philistines closely pursued Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan. Oh, how that had to break David's heart. His soul brother, Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. So the three sons of Saul have been struck down. The battle became heavy against Saul, and the archers overtook him, and he was wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it. Otherwise these uncircumcised will come, and they will abuse me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took his sword, and he fell on it. When his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he likewise fell on his sword and died. Then Saul died with his 3 sons, and all those of his house died together. When all the men of Israel who were in the valley saw that they had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook their cities and fled, and the Philistines came and lived in them. Oh, what a sad moment. It came about the next day, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found the great mighty King Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. So they stripped him. They took his head and his armor and sent messengers around the land of the Philistines to carry the good news to their idols and to their people. They put his armor in the house of their gods, and they fastened his head in the house of Dagon. When all Jabesh-Gilead heard all that the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and took away the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons and brought them to Jabesh, and they buried the bones under the oak in Jabesh and fasted 7 days. So Saul died for his trespass which he committed against the Lord, because the word of the Lord which he did not keep, and also because he asked counsel of the witch of Endor, making inquiry of it. So, in this they took him, and they took his head and posted it in the house of Dagon, and they took his body and the body of his 3 sons, and impaled them on the walls of the beautiful city Bethshean, which would become a Roman center. And even at this time, before the time of Saul, it was an Egyptian governorship, and there was an Egyptian satrap who was there, and it was a huge and beautiful city with a huge and beautiful wall. But the bodies were hung on the wall, and the brothers of Israel went and took them down and buried them. So this impaling happened a lot, to take the body and hold it up there. There are stories in the Maccabees of live people being chained to the outer walls of the city, and as they wasted away, dehydrated, and died of starvation and thirst, then the birds came and began to eat them while they were still alive, and to peck at their faces and eyes while they lived yet, it says. So to impale or to hang on the wall, to hang the bodies and things like that, is a part of that. Now, here you see the Middle East. You see a picture of the Middle East, and we have Iraq and Iran. I keep forgetting the light doesn't show on the TV. But we have Iran, which is huge, and Iraq, and this area. And right here we have the city of Nimrod. Nimrod was where the Assyrian palace was at. This is happening in this area. Okay? We're talking about right smack dab in the middle of Iran, near Nimrod. And at Nimrod, this is the city, the ancient city, right next to the Tigris. The green that you see is the green belt next to the river. Okay? And there's a big major highway you can see running there, a nice modern road. But this is the palace, and this is where Esther is happening. This is it. Okay, this is the palace area that we are actually reading about. And on the walls there, we have pictures of people being impaled on stakes. Now, this is the clearest picture I could find. I wanted a close-up of the impalement, but they're all fuzzy and grainy. Nobody's ever gone up and taken a good picture of this, which tells me next time in the Israel Museum there's a copy of this, and I'm going to zoom in and get a good picture of it, okay? And put it online because it's there. There's a replica that is almost 20 feet long of the Battle of Lachish. But anyway, this is on the walls of the palace and shows people being impaled. On the back side of the palace is a close-up, again, of prisoners being put on spikes and impaled outside to show, look what we've done. Look how good we are. And to denigrate their enemies as much as we can. The story of Dracula is about Vlad the Impaler. Vlad the Impaler, in one day, impaled 280 people on the stakes in front of his castle. And so that's where the story of Dracula comes from. And they ran out of stakes. He had 280 people to impale from the local constabulary that he was in control of, people that were trying to get rid of him. He impaled them on stakes, and down at the bottom you see, when they ran out of stakes, they began to hack them into pieces. And so the little guy at the bottom there is hacking the arms, the legs, and the heads off of the remaining people. I could not find any references to how many people they hacked. All I could find was the 280 impaled, and they ran out of sticks. Wow. And hacked up the rest. But nobody says how many were actually left, okay? But that's a part of history. This, my friends, is a drawing of an Egyptian slave in 1780. who has been found to be a thief by his owner, and an English merchant who was traveling the area and selling to the Egyptians, drew this picture. So even into the 18th century, impaling is a part of the Middle East. Okay? Very much a part of it, even up until that time. So why? Why this whole impalement? Why this whole price being paid? Okay? So let's look quickly at the outline real quick. We'll not finish the outline tonight, but this gives you a good outline of Esther, and then we'll get to the punchline next week, okay? But in Esther 1, we have the king's banquet, and we have Queen Vashti. This is what a woman looks like who is royalty in the Bedouin, which is the Bedouins are primarily Iranian, Iraqi descent. We've talked about the Bedouins who have no homeland, they have no, up until 9/11, they didn't even have passports. Bedouins were passport and paperless people. They had no nationality, and Bedouins could cross the desert borders without impunity whatsoever. After 9/11, they had to state a nationality and had to have papers because it was too easy for terrorists to cross the lines and just dressed as Bedouins and show up and do what they wanted to do. So these are Bedouin women, though, that wear all of their wealth in their jewelry. Gold, semi-precious stones, coins that have been collected their entire life as their dowry. And then they will wear their dowry on their wedding day. And so imagine Esther being chosen by the king to be the replacement queen. How much wealth was that woman forced to wear in her wedding? I mean, her entire dress had to be covered in huge coins and jewels. You know, some people estimate that she literally could have been carrying a couple of 100 pounds of weight in her dress. If you could imagine. Lawrence of Arabia tells the story of one of the women who was married, and she fell under the weight of her wealth, he says. Fell under the weight of her wealth and had to be carried throughout her wedding because there was so much finery and coins and gold and silver. One couldn't stand up under it. So just think about the ancient days when the king owned it all, what it must have been like. Okay? Here you see the different fineries and stuff, and the coins of different tribes and different groups in the Middle East. So in E1 we have the king's banquet and we have Queen Vashti. Vashti was asked to come and show off her beauty. Now, this was not, she wasn't supposed to dance naked or anything like that. It's just that the queens didn't always hang out with the kings. The king had concubines, and she had her own life and her own lifestyle. But the king, after 7 days of celebrating a 7-day party, said, "Bring the queen out here and let everybody see how pretty she is." And the queen took umbrage to that and said, "I'm not a show horse." Basically, I'm not a showpiece. I am not going to go out there and dance for your friends. You know, I'm not going to be paraded around. I am the queen. Well, she learned real quick that that's a temporary role, okay? That she doesn't.
Queen because I say so.
Yeah, she doesn't have to be the queen. So Vashti gets replaced in Esther 2. Esther 2, she was replaced. And let's go to Esther. Kind of have your Bible to Esther there. We'll refer to a couple of verses here as we go on. We're in Esther, the 2nd chapter. And verses 5, 6, and 7. Verses 5, 6, and 7 of Esther. Now there was at the citadel in Susa a Jew whose name was Mordecai. I print this out, I bring this out because this is the first mention of the Jews in Esther and the first mention of Mordecai. So this is our first statement that there were Jews in the palace, the citadel there, the inner part of the palace, where the king sat, the citadel. And it says Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Well, I mean, we even have his royalty. I mean, we've got his genealogy, and that he's a Benjamite. They had been taken into exile from Jerusalem with the captives who'd been exiled with Jeconiah, the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had exiled. So we know Mordecai was a Jerusalemite. He was a Benjamite who lived in Jerusalem, okay? He was bringing up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had no father or mother. So his uncle's daughter is taken care of. Now the young lady was beautiful of form and face, and when her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. And the word Hadassah is a precious, precious name in Israel. Most of the major, really powerful hospitals are called Hadassah Hospital. One of the most powerful research facilities in Israel is the Hadassah Research Facility, a medical research facility, named after this Esther, the Queen Esther. She saved the Jews, and so why not name the hospital to save the Jews after her, okay? And so Hadassah, there are 3 or 4 charities that I know of that are Hadassah charities, that when you give money, you're helping the poor and the lame and the disabled in Israel. Hadassah charities, all named after this woman. We are introduced to Mordecai then, and in verse 16 of the 2nd chapter, Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus to his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. Suddenly, for no good reason, hint, hint, wink, wink, the Jewish calendar is introduced.
What? Oh, okay, 10th month.
The Jewish calendar, yeah. Now look at your 2nd page. Look at your little chart there. You have your little chart that has the chart of the year on there. Do you see the month Tevet, T-E-V-E-T? All right, that's the month we're talking about, okay? It's the 10th month. Here it's called Tebeth, T and V. Remember, the Arabic world doesn't have that same sound. In the 7th year of his reign. So for out of nowhere, we have a Jew introduced. We have his grandniece introduced to this, and we have the Jewish calendar introduced to this. And it actually tells us when it is. There's a foreshadowing here that something's about. There's important. This is important. There's a reason for this, okay? All right, so Esther is favored, and then in this same chapter, she becomes Queen Esther. She's not only favored, but in verse 17, she becomes the queen. And Mordecai hears about this problem that's going around, that these 2 yahoos in the castle want to put the king to death. So Mordecai saves the king, and just think how important this 2nd chapter is now. We've introduced Judaism. We've introduced the exile. We've introduced the Jewish genealogy. We've introduced the Jewish calendar. And suddenly we have a queen in the castle who is a Jew, and we have a hero who is a Jew, all in one chapter. Okay, so that's the 2nd chapter, incredibly important chapter. Esther 3, Mordecai is promoted. He's given a place in the castle. Haman begins to plot against him. Look at Esther, the 3rd chapter. We just read that 7 to 15, or a part of that. In 3:7 says, in the 1st month, which is the month Nisan, yep. In the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, that is, the lot was cast before Haman from day to day, from month to month, until the 12th month, that is the month of Adar. So he's gone from Nisan, which is the 1st month, to the 12th month, casting lots every day, saying, is this the day, is this the day, is this the day? Haman said to the king, there is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of all other people, and they do not observe the king's laws. So it is not in the king's interest to let them remain. See, Norma, there they are living, but they're hanging out in their faith. If it is pleasing to the king, let it be decreed that they be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who carry on the king's business to put into the king's treasures. The king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman. Boy, how important is that? We've learned about the signet ring, right? That's the power. That's the power. And so he gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Remember, the Agagites was one of the group that lived down near Beersheba when we studied down to Beersheba, that said they were told to destroy the Agagites and did not. And God said that they will be a perplex to you forever. Boom.
Yeah, here it is.
Boom. Here you got one right here. You've got an Agagite. And you've got Haman who is doing this, the enemy of the Jews. Then King said to Haman, the silver is yours, and the people also, to do with them as you please. Then the king's scribes were summoned on the 13th day of the first month. You getting all this calendar stuff? Jewish calendar being thrown at us. Who cares? I mean, really. Why slow down the story with all this dating? It's unnecessary. It's totally unnecessary. But there's no coincidences, right? This is going to matter. All these dates we're pointing out. So here's the 13th day of the first month. It was written just as Haman commanded the king's satraps. So in other words, Haman hatched his plot. Hatched his plot on the 13th day of the first month. This is when he did this, okay? That's going to matter to us next week. It's going to matter. Commanded the king's satraps to the governors who were over each province and to the provinces of the people, each province according to its script, each people according to its language, being written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's signet. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all the Jews, both young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. Now, folks, this is not the Assyrian calendar. This is the Jewish calendar. Haman is using the Jewish calendar against the Jews. These days matter. They matter. They're here for a reason. And so verse 14 says, a copy of the edict to be issued as law in every province was published to all the people so that they should be ready for this day. The couriers went out, impelled by the king's command, while the decree was issued at the citadel in Susa, and while the king and Haman sat down to drink, the city of Susa was in confusion. Now, Susa is within eyeball distance of Nimrod, okay? And that's where Haman actually lived. He lived in the city of Susa, but he worked in the citadel. And so he commuted from his home in a neighboring protectorate, a little city who's down the hill from the king. Okay? If you were going to hang somebody, wouldn't you want them to be tall enough so you could see them from your home? Think about it. Get it up high enough so I can see it when I get home. And by the way, I was telling my wife about it. I'd like for her to see it too. Just think about it. Got him up high enough. Get that gallows up high enough so I can see it from my backyard when I barbecue. Yeah. With my tequila, you know, a little margarita there, and my hot dog bun. Yeah, he's putting it all together. So the couriers went and they sat down to drink. The city of Susa was in confusion. So he was having a margarita right there, okay? It says so in the Bible. So, all right, we're out of time. We'll finish up with 4. We'll go through 4. We'll get this. And then we'll introduce what do these dates mean? What do they literally mean and what are they about? Because it's a big deal. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing. Okay? It is going to foretell much of what the Jews have been involved in. And remember, history repeats itself. Amen? Jewish history repeats itself. It's very cyclical. And that wheel comes around. So let's circle it. Let's circle it.